Hello, colleagues. Nice to see each one of you today. Let me introduce myself for those who are not familiar with me. I'm Igor Borodowski, Sales and Support Engineer for Woodwork for Inventor team, and today I proudly present Woodwork for Inventor 13 new features. So let's begin from the agenda, what we will see today. First of all, we will speak about supported versions of Inventor. Then we will see some improvements in the design. Especially, we will speak about the trim extend command improvement. Also, we will speak about what is updated in the hardware department. For instance, the model stays, some new hardware models, and what is more important, we included macros for hardware. Okay, so on the other hand, we have some APIs, the Woodwork Fundamental API, Postprocessors API. We included some new postprocessors. We improved the beta version of the BOM. We made the new version of the BOM. We call it BOM beta. Then we'll see some new features in the samples and manuals. And finally, I will pass the scene to my colleague Darius, who will explain what is the values of the partners. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. So first of all, let's start from the supported versions of Autodesk Inventor, the main software we are using to run our application. And of course, we support 3 versions below the current one. It's like 2023, 22, and 21. So the new version of Inventor is supported. So now let's speak about the improvements in the design part. So on the screen, you can see a new dress-up command. And it works in that way that you can select the faces as previously, and you see that I made extension in the external direction. Okay, now you can define the gap between the panels and say how to extend them. Okay, and you can see that now we have a panel intersection. If needed, I can apply a miter with a gap between the panels, and final solution looks like so. So this is one of the long-awaited first functions of Woodwork for Inventor, and we included this in the new version. Speaking about the miter, it automatically extends the panel if needed, so there is no need to extend it first. You just say you want to have a miter between the panels, which is placed on the top, on the reference box, and it will be done in that way. Okay. Now let's take a look at the changes in hardware. Okay, so first of all, we support a new feature of Inventor, is the model stays. And so we can work with the model stays. I hear someone, maybe it's Darius, I don't know. Please mute your microphones because it's so noisy here. Thank you. So we can use the attach, iMatch, and change functions as we normally do with regular hardware. But keeping in mind that we are working with the items design using model stays feature. Okay. Speaking about the hardware, the more and more complex, nice hardware is reaching the market, and this hardware mostly requires to do some complex tooling. Okay, and for this complex tooling, we need to have machining of multiple steps. Okay, and to make those steps, we need to include more than one command into the operation. Yeah, so it's a macro command. Yeah, we have more than one command, or maybe one complex command, and we call it macro. So here you can see an example of a lamella joint, which is placed in the edge of the part. And to make a cutout for this lamella joint, you need to do some tricky movements of the tool. Another example of a macro case is this situation when you need to sharpen the corners. Okay, so as you can see, it starts from regular pocket operation, but since we are doing this with a rotary tool, the corner will be rounded. And now we change the tool, and we use another milling tool, another milling shape, which is more triangular, and then we just cut the edge like so. Okay, just cut the edge, and the edge will be sharp. So you can see that we have corners, straight corners. Then some hardware can be applied to those corners without any issues. Okay, so it will be valuable to program some repetitive sequence of the operations in advance. Yeah, for instance, like in this case, we can actually do something in a Woodwork for Inventor. We can like make multiple steps how this operation can be proceed. And this would give two tangible benefits: reduce the CNC programming time and eliminate likelihood of the errors because of the human factor. But it will be suitable only for one specific case, yeah? For one size of the cutout and for only one sequence of the operations. So it will be not useful for another cases. Okay, so since there's a plethora of possible applications, like for locks, table legs, supports, joints of different kind, like lifting grill, as you saw in this example. So it's nearly impossible to have everything to be pre-programmed. Yes. And if you would try to make it, if you would try to pre-program all potential cases, even if you will be able to do this, it will turn Woodwork into a difficult-to-use system, because there will be thousands of different combinations I need to browse through menus in order to find the right one. Okay, and on the other hand, there will be always a combination that is not pre-programmed. And in general, the pre-programming is not flexible because it doesn't allow to adapt the cut operation or drill operation or any complex operation in combination of those two to particularities of the company. Yes. On the other hand, it makes the user dependent on the software manufacturer. And as I told already, it's nearly impossible to program any possible case. So it will turn out that time to time user will ask us to add some feature. So as you can see, this method leads to a wrong result. So we choose another one. Yeah, we turn into the macros. In generally speaking, there are some benefits of the macros. They allow you to automate some repetitive CNC operations using variables, using parameters. You can customize those operations, and you can define the sequences in that order that are actually matching your machine capabilities or your workflows in the company. So now let's take a look what we have in Woodwork. So first of all, the macros are attached into the hardware. So it means that if you have a hardware item, you can basically attach the macros to that item. And this can be parametrically driven in a model in two ways. When you change the size, let's imagine that we have a cutout. When you change the size of the cutout, it changes the parameters. And when you change the position of this cutout, it changes another parameters as well. To make the changes to edit those macroses, we developed some editor. As you can see on the screen, actually there is the same window, just split them in two pieces. On the left side, you can see the code of the macro. On the right-hand side, you can see what is the result. Okay. Of course, this is not super complex example in this case, but you can see that we actually have some code of the program developed using this macro. Okay. And we have a possibility to use operation in combination. Yes. I see some new colleague arrived. Please mute your microphone because there is a noise coming from your microphone. Thank you. So if it's not enough to have only one single operation, you can combine multiple macroses. Yeah, maybe it's more logical to combine 3 simple operations rather than have one complex macro. Okay. And in this way, you can program some things that are not possible in the regular Woodwork for Inventor. For instance, you can make a tooling on a 5-axis machine. Of course, if the machine is capable of doing such kind of operations, you can basically have a macro which cannot be interpreted in regular Woodwork for Inventor. Okay. Moreover, you can also integrate macros that are developed in another macro development tools. Yeah, so we have third-party application suitable for a macro generation. Maybe as the hardware manufacturer can send you some macro or so on. So you can use those macros. I just embedding them in the code of your hardware. Okay, so let's take a look how the workflow looks like. First of all, we need to decide what hardware item we want to model. Yeah? So we need to define what is the critical parameters, how this model should look like, and so on. And we need to make this library component. Okay? On the second step, we need to make a cutout for this component. There is multiple ways of how you can do this. You can manually generate the steps needed for this cutout. Let's say milling, maybe drilling or something similar. And then you need to find out how the program code looks like. Okay? So when you find out how the code looks like, we need to differentiate how to position the item on the panel. What is the coordinate system of the item itself? Yeah, so we have two coordinate systems: the coordinate system of the cutout and the coordinate system of the item on the part. Okay, we can base it on a different clamping on the workpiece or on the final part. It depends. And of course, you need to define the code of the macro using the parameters of the model. Yeah, so in this way, you can relate your hardware with the macro code. Say you change the size of this hardware piece, and then the macro will update in order to correspond to the new situation. And finally, when you have all those things done, you need to just place the hardware in a part, assembly environment, make a cut operation, and in the browser, you'll see a macro. So generally, it looks like that when the system finds the macro code, it just embeds this macro code into the general CNC program. Yes. If there is no macro, it runs in a regular way, and if it finds the macro, it works in that way that it takes a piece of code and put into the CNC program. Okay, now let's speak about Woodwork Fundamental API. Okay, first of all, just a few words about what is the API. We can see an example, yes, which looks like conversation between two people, right? So we have a user, we have some request, and there is some application. And the API is like working in between. Yes, we just sending the request and the API process them and send the response. So it's like intermediate between two different kind of software. So in our case, we can give you controls in order to get some information from the Woodwork. Okay, why do we need this at all? Because different companies use different workflows. Of course, many companies have some similarities, but on the other hand, there is some major differences. Maybe you are working with some painted materials, maybe you do only lamination and so on and so forth. So you need to get different kind of information in a bulk. Maybe you want to change the grain direction in some certain way when there is some condition applied. Yeah, so that's why we decided to give you such controls. Okay, because if we try to make software suitable for anyone, you can imagine how big this software will be. Yeah, so how complex this software will be. There will be thousands of different commands, and 99% of you will not use all of them. Yes, you'll try to find a single button, and it will lead to a failure because it will be very hard to navigate and very hard to do this software and maintain this software. So the API allows you to get the things that you really need without overcomplicating software. So you can just make some commands that actually gives you the results, brings the data out of Woodwork that you really need. So as you can see, we made this like a solution for those of you who are not happy with the Woodwork capabilities, or maybe there are some routines that, as you can imagine, can be automated in some certain way that is applicable in your factory. So now you have a tool that allows you to do this. Yes, so later on we'll see what actual options are available. So on one hand, it gives you a freedom, and another one, it gives you automation. So you can see two tangible benefits from using an API. So speaking about the freedom, you will not forced to wait. Your function will be applied because we have our production chain, we have our terms and so on. So not each of the requests of the customer can be immediately applied in the software, right? So there is no wait chain, okay? There is no collision with our development cycle. And also you can develop some unique workflows only applicable for your company. Maybe there's no other companies that actually need such kind of operations. And of course, the last one is the price. Yeah, so probably if you have some skills in the programming, yes, and you need to do some little tweaks, it will be way cheaper in terms of time and money to implement those features you need on your own. Speaking about automation, there is always a balancing between the flexibility and automation. So the more automated things are, they are less flexible. Yes. So you can just imagine some examples of that. Yes. Let's say you have a coffee machine, but this coffee machine can make only coffee. Yeah, right. So if you want a tea, you need to have some flexibility in it. So the same goes here. So the API gives you a possibility to automate some routine operation in your certain way. So in such way, you get flexibility and automation, and you don't get the case that we discussed when there is some negative aspects of the hierarchy. Okay, now let's take a look at example of Woodwork Fundamental API, and you can see some cabinet here, and we called iLogic form. Yes, in order to change the size of this cabinet. Okay, nothing really special here, just a regular form of iLogic. Okay, but there is some additional commands available for your service, for your needs. You can use in the iLogic in order to ask the information from the Woodwork or to change something. Like in this case, say when you change the search side, yes, you can just swap the handle position, get rid of the drilling, and make drilling on the other side. But beside that, you can see something related with the materials. In this case, we have a color combination. Yes, you can choose your colors here. In the iLogic, it was not possible before. And when you apply the coloring configuration, those changes actually reflected in the model. So you can see that it actually allows you to give some controls, get some controls about Woodwork features in your iLogic rules. Okay. It's not so easy to explain all possible situations, what can be done and how this can be done. So therefore, we have some samples with the installation, like in terms of snippets. And those of you who are familiar with the programming can find them very useful in terms of how one or another thing can be done. But of course, the programming is a very wide topic. I'm not able to cover all of those nuances, so that's why I'm explaining you the basics, how the workflow looks like. Okay, so what skills is required for a Woodwork Fundamental API usage? Basically, there is no need to be a super programmer, a full-time programmer. It's enough to know iLogic on the basic level, but you need to actually know Woodwork Fundamental, what Woodwork Fundamental allows you to do, how it works, and what is the capabilities of Woodwork Fundamental. So if you want to get some more advanced operations, you can also use custom applications on the C# or VBA and embed the buttons which actually call those applications in the interface of Fundamental. Okay. So now the main question is what Woodwork API is capable of doing. And since this is like early bird, the first release of the API, not all the commands are presented here, but nonetheless, we have some basic stuff you can see here. We can read materials from the Woodwork Fundamental database, and we can assign the materials to the part or cover material to the faces of the workers. And we can delete materials, remove the materials from the part, control the grain direction and oversize, make face collections. So for instance, we can collect all the edges and reassign the material in certain scenario if needed. Yeah, for instance, if you have inset door or overlay door, maybe we need to play around with the edge banding thickness or something similar. So it can be done. Okay, and as I mentioned already, the help of Woodwork will also include API functionality definition. Okay, now let's speak about postprocessors API. Okay, you know the workflow probably. So there is the CAD system which generates geometry, and then you're working on the CAM level in order to define how this geometry should be processed. And there is a translator between the CAM and the real CNC machine. Yeah. It actually translates the CAM instructions, which in most cases are redundant, into the language which is understandable for your CNC machine. In most cases is some form of ISO or EIA standard G-code, but those G-code commands are not unified. It may look like the commands are the same, but it might be a different kind of machines or different type of machines uses the G-code in a different way. So the same command can mean something different. So therefore, if you have more than one machine, it might be that you need to have more than one postprocessor. Okay. So you know that in Woodwork Fundamental we have a bunch of postprocessors for well-known machine brands as Homag, Piese, IMA, SCM, and so on. However, the range of our customer grows, and we often encounter less known CNC brands, less known CNC machines. Okay, so not so widespread manufacturers. And this led to two main things why we decided to make a postprocessor API, why we decided to give the user tools to actually define what they want on their own. Because the demand of the custom postprocessor is constantly growing and does this in an exponential way. And unfortunately, our programmer stuff doesn't grow in the exponential way, at least right now. So we have some limitation of the bandwidth, how much code we can generate in a certain amount of time. The other point is that without access to some exotic CNC machines, we're forced to involve user in a time-consuming debugging process. So we are sending some data to the user and asking if it works. If it does, then explain if there is no nuances or something, some mistakes in the tooling. And we do this on the recursive way, yeah? Just go back and forth, back and forth. So this is like time-consuming process for both of the customer and our programming team. That's why we decided to give the controls to the users. So what benefits the users get? So first of all, the saving in terms of time and money, because they can create or modify existing postprocessors. They can do this independently in the right time without trying to convince us that this is very important and without waiting when it will be implemented. So they have no time pressure and so on. And also, on the other hand, they can make a postprocessor for some unique machines, maybe that are not very widespread and so on, but nonetheless they are working, they're doing their job. So they have tool to actually make them work in the way they need. Okay, and you may be wondering what skills are required for postprocessor development. So in this case, you need to know the programming at some basic level. Ideally, you need to know how the JavaScript works, okay? Because it's used for postprocessor programming in our case. You need to have a basic programming skill, but you need to have good knowledge of how the CNC machine can be programmed and how the software which is installed on the machine, we call it like front-end software, works. Okay? So actually the software that you are using for interaction between the machine and the machine operator. Also, you need to know the description, the definition of the file format. What instructions are possible to define in the postprocessor and how to do this and so on. And of course, you need to know how Woodwork the CAM module works. Okay, what is the clamping? What is the difference between the workpiece and the final part? how the grain direction, hour sizes affect the base point position, and so on and so forth. Okay. So how to make a postprocessor? Of course, I will not explain how to do programming. Okay. But you can find the postprocessors after the installation in the directory you can see on the screen. Basically, it's a public document, Woodwork Fundamental version, and there's SDK folder, and you can have a list of a postprocessor here. Okay, there's not a lot of them in the moment, but basically you can just do a reverse engineering of the postprocessors and see how they actually works. The good news is that those postprocessors are open source, so you can just do analysis and make some changes. You can use them as a seed to make your own postprocessors based on the definition you can see in those folders. Yeah. For instance, the XML JS, you can see a list of objects and their properties. Okay. In the Mark3 JS, this is an example of G-code for a Mark3 format, how this can be done. And if using TPA cat, then the format for JS is the postprocessor to define how the output TPA file can be applied. Okay. So, as I mentioned already, Woodwork Fundamental uses JavaScript to make postprocessors. And there's various editors optimized for it. So we recommend to use Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Yes, and I highlighted the code because it's freeware, as I know. So it provides you the color coding of the command you're writing. Yes, so it automatically closes the matching parentheses and brackets. It applies the indentations automatically, so you can see where the block of codes are resided in your text. Yes, you have some tools to intelligently complete the text, the code of the text, the text of the code you're entering. There's syntax checking and the debugging ability. So you can use this plenty enough for starting. Yeah? So you can use it like a main tool for defining your new postprocessor. And speaking about the postprocessor, there is some new postprocessors, like you can see them on the screen. But Masterwork, and we have a bunch of G-code for Fanuc, CNC, and Syntec machines. So if you see one of the postprocessors in the list that you may be waiting for, we have a good news for you. Now let's take a look at what improvements are waiting for in the BOM. And as I mentioned already in the agenda, we have a new bill of material generator. Okay? And after some time, this new material BOM generator will replace the existing one. So we have an opportunity to adapt the changes. Yeah? So they will not happen all of a sudden, but in some release of Woodwork, you will see this as a main tool. Okay? We have a parts-only BOM option. Yeah? Something that we have been asked about. We have more formats like XML, Google Sheets in the future, and so on, to be used as an export format. The UI is more flexible. Okay? And of course, you may say that you don't want to use the new version for some reason. Maybe you already defined your workflows and you don't want to change them. So this new beta bill of material is disabled by default. And in order to make it accessible, in the Woodwork Fundamental settings in the BOM, in the very bottom, you see this Use New BOM App. Yes. And since it's beta, just keep in mind that some stays, some bugs may happen when you use it. So feel free to leave your feedback in case if it will happen. We'll try to fix those mistakes. Okay. Okay. Now let's speak about other things. Okay. Speaking about the material editor, we have a filter that allows you to find materials easier. On the BOM side, there is new item mass keyword, and as the name tells, it allows you to export the mass of the component into the specification. Another feature is also requested by many of our customers is to orient the component, the part, according to the CAM technology. So if you made the CAM first and then you do the drawings, so maybe you want to orient the parts on a drawing in regard of the CAM technology. Now you have a tool to do this. Okay. Speaking about the CAM, we changed the tool length verification. You remember that for some tools, you may enable ignore working length option in the previous version. Okay, and now there is no need to do this because tool length verification is tied to workpiece body. Okay, so there is no need to have those unreasonably long tools in the database. The diagnostic mechanism now graphically indicates when the collision with the workpiece happens, due to the length. So nesting technological operation is supplemented with the tool information. You can see what tool is used for the nesting. Okay? Also, under the hood, we refine the algorithms used to define the machining contours. Also, we made a lot of optimization, some small tweaks here and there. We updated the samples and the help system and the API help, so you can see how the new things works more in detail. And we think that maybe in the future we'll do another webinar. Maybe we will ask our colleagues, the programmers, to participate as well, speak about the API stuff. Okay, some UI items were refined, and a lot of small fixes were applied. Okay, so that's the main things we can see in the new version of Woodwork Fundamental. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and please don't run away, because now Darius will explain what is the values of a Woodwork 13 for the partners. Give me a moment, I will switch the presenter.
Okay. Do you see my screen? Okay. So, hello everyone. And first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your work that you are doing for your partnership. And I very much hope that this partnership is mutually beneficial. So, Igor has presented to you what's new in version 13 and how these features are valuable for the Woodwork users. I want to talk about what additional value the new version can create for you, for our partners. Woodwork has been in development already 14 years and has grown from several functions add-on into a sophisticated furniture design system with a range of features that satisfies the majority of user needs. However, no software can cover all possible options, and there is a growing need to customize Woodwork to suit the needs of a particular company. In other words, there's a growing need for customization. This customization requires additional programming of Woodwork for Inventor, which until this version could only be done by our programming team. However, as the number of Woodwork users has grown, the need for such customization has grown exponentially. And we, in order to meet the market demand more efficiently, we have decided to open Woodwork to third-party developers, to open this possibility from version 13. We have done this by creating 3 new features that ensure this openness. It's API, postprocessor API, and macro. Igor has already told you what these features can do and how they are valuable for the end user. Now let's talk about how they benefit you. our partners, how can benefit you. So, until now, only we, the Woodwork team, have been able to carry out this additional customization. From version 13 onwards, additional Woodwork programming will be available not only from our developers, but also from third parties who will be able to customize Woodwork for their own specialized needs. These third parties are freelance programmers who solve various programming tasks in-house according to the customer wishes, implementers of other systems such as enterprise resource planning. They usually need to carry out ERP integration with other IT systems, including CAD. Of course, the customers themselves, who can also take advantage of Woodwork's new capabilities. And last but not least, it's you, our partners, Woodwork distributors. Of these categories, we believe that it is the partners who have the best chance of benefiting from these new features, because they are familiar with Inventor, with Woodwork, have the right competences, and are able to create the most value for their customers with the new features of version 13. Let's talk about the value these new features bring to our partners. API. As probably Igor already told, we decided to develop and release this feature in response to increasing number of requests from partners, not from customers, but from partners. More and more they are faced with the need from their customers to customize Woodwork and use Woodwork in their own way. The most common customization task that arrives with various configurators. Another need is to automate certain routine operations that are repeatedly day after day in the design process. And last but not least is the creation of smooth connection with other IT systems inside the company. There are many such systems in the company whose integration enhances the efficiency of company's work, like production planning and management, manufacturing execution systems, cutting optimizations, ERP, and so on. Until now, each of these customizations has required our direct involvement. As such, integration and customization require changes to Woodwork itself. However, this process has some issues. First of all, it's clumsy process of development. It's unattractive for the client as it requires a lot of communication and coordination. And the user has to adapt to our workload to wait for us to free up for his task, because we are very loaded. Another problem is that not all the features requested by the user are in line with our system concept, which is why we don't always agree to change Woodwork's internal mechanisms, and then either the user has to adapt to us or we don't agree to make these changes. So what changes in this situation with new version, and what is valuable for our partners with new open version? First of all, it's competitive advantage. With the ability to program Woodwork via API, the range of user needs which answers can now be offered is significantly expanded. And other competing softwares at our level, such as IMOS, as Wood, do not mention API. They do not offer such how to say ability for third parties to expand, to develop their products. Flexibility. With API, there is no conflict with our ideology. Since working through the API, all changes are external to Woodwork, it does not require internal changes in our software. The partner and the customer can set and solve tasks that are completely different from our ideology and technology. Autonomy, independence. Now the partner doesn't have to adapt to our capabilities, to our workload. wait for us to free up to take on his client challenge. Now the partner can meet their customer's special needs when the customer needs it. And money. Last but not least, integration and customization is a growing need in market as companies strive for more and more efficiency and more such services will be required. So, in our opinion, this is a new business opportunity for our partners to work with making customizations for their clients. Postprocessors API. Igor already told that Woodwork for Inventor has developed and well-matched postprocessors for widespread and well-known brands like Homag, Biesi, IMA, SCM. But as circle of CAM users expands, we are confronted with new machine brands. There are less well-known or less widespread some local brands, and they also need postprocessors to be developed. And a separate case is the development and modification of G-code postprocessors. Also, Woodwork has approximately 10 different modifications of such postprocessors. Today, G-code orders account for more than half of our postprocessor creation orders. As the woodwork market share grows, new types of machine tools are being introduced, and the need to modify existing postprocessors and developing new ones grows accordingly. Again, currently when Woodwork does not have the required postprocessor or an existing one needs to be modified, a customer or partner asks us to create a new postprocessor. And however, these current processes also have some issues. First of them is that demand of postprocessor development has grown exponentially, and our postprocessor development timescale have started to become unjustifiably long. Another issue is, again, the same problem, clumsy process. We do not have access to all the CNC machine models, so we are forced to involve the user in the debugging process. For this reason, we decided to give the user the possibility to create their own post-processors. And for partners, this openness, in our opinion, gives such benefits. First of all, it's independence. Partners don't have to maneuver between client pressure to create a post-processor and our ability to do so, which depends on our workload. The partner will be able to do the customer order, to fulfill the customer order much faster. Flexibility. When we develop post-processor, we try to make them as versatile as possible, to fit as wide a market as possible. And when a partner develops its own post-processor, he will be able to design them to be tailored as possible to the user processes and technology. And last but not least, it's business. As mentioned above, the demand is steadily growing, and the partner can earn income now and in the future by developing post-processors themselves. And the last feature that opens Woodwork for third-party developers is CNC macros. This feature is more targeted to the customer themselves, as the application of this feature requires a deep knowledge of the machine and the company's manufacturing traditions. This is why the main user of macros in the company is the company's employee who programs the CNC machines. So mastering CNC macros for partners is not so promising compared to API and post-processor API. However, for those partners who have specialists working with CAM, it would not cost much to adopt this feature and create for themselves another customer value generating activity. So this was about this three new open features. And now 3 new open features, and we have 3 configurations of Woodwork: Basic, with CAM, and Nesting. So which Woodwork configuration will these new features will be accessible? From which configuration? As you can see, API is accessible from all Woodwork configurations, while API, postprocessor API and macros are accessible from CAM and nesting configurations only. So now about organizational things. Next steps. First of all, it's mastering this new feature, adapting it. Yeah, these are three completely new areas that require information and support to master them. For this, we have prepared the following, let's say, tools. I don't know how to name them. First of all, this webinar, previous Igor presentation, which gave you an overview of its features. Next, when new version is released, it will come out with manual. Manual will be later, somewhere in the middle of the June, because it will take time to prepare for publication. Then there will be programming help. It's description of objects, of methods, of properties of these objects, and examples of API programs, postprocessors, and macros. And support. For those who will start developing applications or postprocessors or just want to practice, support is ready to help. We are not planning any training yet. However, if we will find that there is a need, we will organize such training. And for now, for those who want to start coding, please contact our support desk, and you will be directed to specialists in the relevant field who will advise you and help you in developing your own applications. Some important dates. On May 13, next Monday, this is last day to place orders to upgrade maintenance plans on current version 12, so that customer can receive these upgrades. May 31st, last day of May, Tuesday, all partner and user accounts will be disabled in Partner Center because newer serial numbers will be generated on that day. So you will be not able to place any orders on that day, on May 31st. On June 1st, new version will be launched, where user accounts will be enabled, and everyone will see their new version serial number there. And 1 month after the launch, traditionally grace period, 1 month promo for those who have old versions and want to upgrade to the new one. Promotion conditions: upgrade for the price of maintenance plan plus mandatory maintenance plan. With the release of the new version, we will launch 2 new landing pages, one for API and postprocessor API, and another one for macros. And of course, we will launch a mailing, posting in social media, and so on. From your side, we very much hope that you will organize webinars to introduce the new version in your home markets. For those of you who would like to organize such a webinar, we will share Igor's technical presentation in PowerPoint so that you can make the preparation as effortless as possible. Whoever is planning this webinar, please email either me or Camila, and we will send you Igor's technical presentation PowerPoint, and if you will need, Igor will help you in preparation of this presentation. So that's all I wanted to tell today. I hope you are interested in these new features and you are interested in new possibilities. If you have any questions about them, please contact me. Thank you, and probably that's all. Thank you for your attention.